What's up there, crewmates? Today I'm going to be going over with you some deck lists that have been topping some events going around as the One Piece card game starts to pick up some traction. We've got a few weeks going into this brand new game, and I'm hoping to bring you some nice meta tournament relevant content coming up in the future. Go ahead and radical beam that like button and the subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this in the future. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into these 4 deck lists that I have for you today. Starting up, we have a Doffy Flamingo deck. Now, the Doffy, with 2 down under him, when you attack, you pay a 1, and you check the top card of your deck. And if it is a 7 Warlords type character with cost 4 or less, you may play it for free and rest it. So, as you can tell, probably, this can generate a lot of free advantage, because it's just checking the top card of your deck, and if you hit it, you get it out for free. So, we're going to start with a Trafalgar Law blocker. He's a 1-drop, but he is a 7 Warlords. So, if he's on the top of your deck when you proc it, you can play this for free. There's definitely better targets you want, because he is the 1-drop, but more targets do not hurt. This card also combos with another card later on, I'm pretty sure he plays it, which is the Moria, yeah. But, pretty sure you all know the 1-drop blocker. The second card is 2 copies of Bartholomew Kuma. He is a 2-drop that lets you check the top 3 cards of your deck when he's played, and rearrange them in any order, or put them on the bottom in any order. So that can work very well with your Doffy leader to make sure that you get the card you want on the top of your deck to play for 1 off of the Doffy effect. He's also a trigger, so he gets to play for free if he's knocked out of damage. Very nice. We have 4 copies of the Trigger Blocker Boa, who is also a 7 Warlords of the Sea, so playable off of the Doffy Flamingo. That's her effect. I mean, she's the blocker. You can play it for free off a trigger. Not bad. Playing 4 copies of that. 4 copies of the Edward Weevil. Now, this is a vanilla, but he is a 5k that you can play off of the Doffy leader because he is a 7 Warlords. So it's not bad, per se. And there's a limited card pool, so I wouldn't go against playing a card like this. One of the best cards in the deck is actually the character Doffy Flamingo, which is the 3-drop. He is a blocker, but he also has the on-play effect that you can check the top 5 cards of your deck and rearrange them in any order. And that's very important for this leader because you're checking the top card of your deck when you use his effect to get some free value out of it. Playing 4 copies of that. The next 4 of is the other Bartholomew Kuma, who is a blocker, but on KO you can play a Pacifista card with cost 4 or less from your hand to the board for free. So as long as you're playing other Pacifistas, whenever he's KO'd, you can actually replace him with something. So if you bring him out and rested, he's probably going to want to be killed so you don't get a free blocker up on the following turn. But if you have a Pacifist in hand, you get to replace him immediately. Pretty good. But actually, if you look at this list, they're not actually playing any Pacifists, so they're more of just playing him as another target that could be a useful blocker if it's not attacked right away. The Promo Crocodile is featured in this deck, which is very interesting. I haven't tested this in a Doffy deck yet, but I think it has potential because it's a 4-cost 5k, playable off the Doffy Flamingo, and you can give him a Dawn to give him blocker on the following turn. Now, the 5k 6-drop Crocodile isn't able to be played off of the Doffy Flamingo, so there is an argument to play this one over that one in this particular deck because of the synergy with the leader, but I just love the 6k stat line of a 5-drop 6k blocker so much. I definitely want to test this promo in the deck. I think it has potential. They were playing 4 of it, so they definitely liked it. Mihawk is a fantastic card in any deck that can play blue, and he just so happens to be a 4-drop 7 Warlords of the Sea type character, so you can play him for free off of the Doffy. Very nice. He has that nice 2k guard, draws 2, and trashes 2 cards from your hand whenever he attacks. You have a Dawn under him. Moria is probably one of my favorite cards in this deck, because you can play him for free, because he's a 7 Warlords, but on play, he gets to take any 7 Warlords or Thriller Bark type character with cost 4 or less from your trash and put it back in your hand. So you get instant value off of playing him and resting. So even if he's attacked on the following turn by your opponent, you've already gotten value off of him. You've replaced him, and he was a free card anyway, so when you play him, that's a +1, and then you get a card back, that's a +2 on card economy, and if they don't kill him, you have a 5k attacker. He doesn't even need Dawn investment to go in. I think this is probably my favorite card in the, I guess the archetype of 7 Warlords with Doffy. Next is Marshall D. Teach. He's a 4-drop, playable off Doffy with 4k. On play, you can return 1 character with cost 3 or less to the owner's hand. So he lets you clear little blockers and potentially attackers out of the way when you play him, and he is on play. So if you play him off the Doffy, his effect will trigger, which is good. Not much to say about him other than that. He's a solid card. One of the other best cards in the deck is definitely the Boa Hancock, the super rare. So she's a 4 cost 5k, playable off Doffy, who is a blocker, and if there's a Dawn under her, when she attacks or blocks, you get to draw a card if there are 5 or less cards in your hand. So 5 or less is a big number, so you're pretty much always going to be able to draw a card off of her. And if you're playing her for free, your opponent really wants to clear off the board before you start drawing. I've technically wanted to really see her in my hand so I can just hard play her rather than play her for free, because that leaves her vulnerable and she won't be able to draw a card. But if you start, stacking her off of the Doffy, I mean, free value is free value, right? They're also playing 4 copies of the other Moria. Now, this I'm on the fence about personally. You can play him off Doffy, obviously. He's a 4 cost. He's 5k, which is a good stat line. It says during your turn, if you have 5 or more cards in your hand, he gains double attack, so he does 2 damage if he hits. Having 5 or more cards in your hand in this deck is actually pretty easy, but if you don't, he's literally just a 5k vanilla, so he's the same as playing the Edward Weevil. So I'm kind of like, I'm pretty sure he could play better cards than this Moria specifically. He's playing 2 of the 7-drop Doffy, who on play lets you put any character with cost 7 or less back into the owner's hand. Lets you clear some guys, but I'm kind of personally on the fence about this. He's pretty high costed. If you're at 10, you can still play this and play the Doffy effect. But the high cost I do like is the Dracul Mihawk. He's a 9-drop, 9k, and instead of bouncing something to the hand, he puts it on the bottom of the deck. So he just outs it completely. So, like a 6k blocker that could be in your way, the Laws, the Queens, even a Crocodile on the opposing side of the field, even little blockers that you might not want to see, just right on the bottom of the deck, and they're done. So, I think this deck is pretty solid. I am a bit surprised that he's not playing Perona. I really like Perona in this deck. She does the same thing as the Kuma. She is not targetable by the Doffy himself, but she lets you check top 5, and she's a Thriller Bark Pirate, so you can actually get her back with this Moria. And for 4 to play him, and then 1 to play the Perona, you get to sculpt the top of your deck, and then trigger your Doffy 100% of the time, pretty much, right? Like, I think that's pretty good. So, other than the Perona, I think it's a pretty solid list. And this man came in with the first place slot with the Doffy deck. Alright, we're moving on to the Kaido deck. So, this is the starter deck Kaido, not the dual Kaido, so Dawn -7. You get to trash an opponent's life, so it won't go to their hand, go straight to the graveyard. Starting with 3 copies of the Korozumi blocker, which is just a strictly better blocker than Black Moria, so nothing wrong there. 2 copies of Sasaki, so -1 Dawn, you get to draw a card. This is our boy Triceracopter. Get 2 copies of Big Ol' Jack. You get to discard a card from your hand, add a Dawn from your Dawn deck into active, which is important. It's not rested. A lot of these cards do it in rested. It's a free ramp. 2 copies of Who's Who. I really like Who's Who. I play 4 in most of my Kaido decks. But at Dawn -1, you get to KO any of your opponent's characters that are cost 3 or less. Doesn't matter if they're rested, doesn't matter if they're active, you're just gone. Use a trigger, get to play them off damage. Pretty solid card in my opinion. 4 copies of Ulti, has 2k guard. On play, Dawn -1. Get to play 1 page 1 card, cost 4 or less from your hand to the board. They are playing 4 copies of the page 1, so we'll go ahead and look at him first. Cost 4, playing off of the Ulti, 5k power. Once per turn, Dawn -1, he's able to attack your opponent's active characters. So if they're standing, he can still swing. Not too shabby. 4 copies of Uta, the super rare from the starter deck. She is a blocker, she has 5k. She's on block, Dawn -1. You can rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. That's a big cost, actually. She can rest a multitude of creatures. Big blockers, attackers you don't want to swing. She can technically just go ahead and stop 2 attacks. Pretty good. 3 copies of the Black Maria blocker that's a 4-drop, 5k. She can actually increase her own strength. On block, Dawn -1, she gains 1,000 power, so she can become a 6k blocker. So it's not bad. But they have Queen, so I don't know if I would play this. Queen being another 4 of 5 cost, 6k blocker. Gets to draw 2, ditch 1, when played for Dawn -1. I love that effect. It pluses you. It lets you see more cards, filter through your deck. It lets you even use extra copies of like Onigashima as part of just paying for the effect that you wouldn't use. Love this card. Definitely a 4 of. 4 copies of Extra. He's 2k guard, good in hand. But his on-field effect, pretty good too. On play, Dawn -1, your opponent has to discard a card. So you can manipulate your opponent's resources a bit. Playing 2 copies of the 7-drop King from the set and not the starter deck. So he's a 7-drop with 7k. On play, Dawn -2. Get to KO one opponent's character that's cost 3 or less, and then one opponent's character that's cost 2 or less. So if the board is set up in his favor of his effect, you can actually pop 2 people for just the 1 card. Not too shabby. One of my personal favorite cards is the 9-drop Kaido with 10k. On play, Dawn -5, kill anything on the board that's cost 6 or less. So he takes out the big blockers, the little blockers, attackers, pretty much anything that's not another boss card, he can take out. And then he gains rush, so he can swing immediately. I love this card, so I built a deck around it. The 10-drop Kaido, the 12k big boy, Dawn -6 on play. If your leader is the Animal Kingdom Pirates, KO everything but himself. He is a board wipe, he's a big boy, but you're not always going to want to play this card. This card's like a contingency plan. If things aren't going your way, you're going to want to play it, but other than that, you're not going to want to play it. You know? So there's times where you're just like, oh, maybe I just don't need this card. So you hold it, and then you can use it for queen discarding and all that good stuff. Moving on to the events, we have the Ulti Mortar, 3 copies. This card I'm on the fence about. I like it, but it's highly costly because it costs 1 and then you Dawn -2 to use its effect. You gain 2k on your character or leader and then you draw a card. You always look at cards that let you draw a card. They're just good, you know. It replaces itself, gives you 2k, but that pay 1, Dawn -2 can set you back, especially early on in the game. Later on in the game, maybe not so much. So I probably wouldn't play a lot of it if I was going to play it at all, maybe like 2 copies, so you can reduce the chance of seeing it early and only see it later in the game. But I think it's good. It also triggered a ramp 1. This also, the Thunder Bruga also has a trigger to ramp 1. But this is the 2 cost plus 4k event, you know, every color has one. But if your life is 2 or less, you get to add a Dawn from your Dawn deck and rested, so it also ramps. Not too shabby, playing 3 copies of that. And the 2 copies of this, like, I guess I could call it a spicy tech, but it's Elephant's Marchu. I'm not a big fan of this card. It's 4 cost to KO an opponent's cost 2 or less and then ramp 1. There's just not a lot of 2 or lesses that I would want to kill, especially not pay 4 to kill. If it's a 3 or less, I think it's a different story because that's the Who's Who territory, and I think that's a good card. But like, compare this to Who's Who, right? So this is a 4 cost that kills a 2 or less, and then Who's Who's a 3 cost that kills a 3 or less. It's just a better effect. I'm not a big fan of this card. I'd probably just rather play 2 copies of Brachio Bomber if I was going to play a card like this. And then we got the 4 copies of Onigashima. You know, if you want to play Onigashima, you just play the 4 copies so you can see it early. That's kind of my 2 cents on the card. It's like, if I want to play Onigashima, I just max it out so I can see it early and then I can get it going. And your extra copies, you can just discard before. So, looking like a pretty solid deck. There are definitely changes I would make personally, but seem to be doing pretty well. Moving on. Next up, we have the Law. Now, Law is a very combo-oriented leader. It says once per turn, you can pay 2. If you have a full board of 5 characters, return 1 of your characters to your hand, and then you can play 1 character with a cost of 5 or less with a different color than the returned character to your hand. To simplify that, you can only play red and green. So you bounce a green, you play a red, you bounce a red, you play a green. Now, if it was like all the colors, it'd be like, shoot, what's happening? But since there's only 2 colors, it's not overly complicated. It can just seem that way. Starting off with 2 copies of the 1-drop Nami. I really like 1-drops in this deck, period. You just kind of want to spam 1-drops so you can pay your big guys for pretty much free. But this Nami has a lot of utility in this deck, because you get to reuse your Dawn that you use. So if you pay 2 for the Law, and you still have her up, you can then use that to boost up your guys, pay for your Dawn skills. It's good. Only playing 2 copies of it, though. Playing 3 copies of Otama, though. She has a recyclable on-play effect. All on-play effects are recyclable in this Law deck because you can bounce them in your hand and play them again. So she lets you neg a opponent's character by 2k power during the turn. She also has 2k guard. Good. Now this Nami, which is the set Nami, looks top 5 cards of the deck, reveal a Straw Hat type card, other than Nami, add it to your hand, place it on the bottom. I am very surprised that he's only playing 2 of this. This is definitely a 4 of, I think, in this deck, because you can spam this card and get a lot of value off of her. 4 copies of the 1-drop Capone blocker for green, very good in this deck. You can just play it down and bounce it, play it for defense, obviously. 4 copies of Bonnie, another search card. Pay 1, tap her, and then check top 5 for a Supernova type card. Add it to your hand, put the rest on the bottom. And you can, use that effect and then bounce it your hand, play a red so you can use her again extra. Because you want to keep your hand value up as high as possible by reusing your on-play effects. Because this leader can generate a lot of value. Playing 2 copies of Momo. Momo is very similar to Bonnie. You pay 1 to tap him, check top 5 for a Wano type card. I guess this slot kind of came out of the Nami, but it seems just from a quick look over, they're only playing a couple other Wano cards. So more often than not, I would say that this card would whiff on its effect, so I'm not really sure what the idea was behind this. Maybe they just have a secret idea that I don't know about, but playing 2 copies of this Usopp, Dawn times 2 when attacking, your opponent can't activate blocker with 5,000 or more power. This is the starter deck Usopp that I think it's terrible. I would never play this card. Maybe he found the secret tech, I don't know. But I think this card is god-awful, and I'm sorry, Usopp, but he would not be in my deck list. Now this Brook has more potential. He has an on-play effect. Give your leader your characters 2 Rest to Dawn cards. He costs 2 to play, so you can pay him and then give 2. But, I mean, he has 2K guard 2. I can see the usefulness of it. I don't know if I would play him. I think there are better cards. This Killer I do like in this deck, because you're playing the 1-drop Nami that can recycle Dawn. So you can pay for that skill, his skill when blocking, to draw a card easily and freely because of the Nami. And also, the 3 or more characters is easy to fulfill in this deck because the whole point of your deck is to spam the board. So, since your game plan is already getting a full board, resolving this is a lot easier. So I do like this blocker in the deck. Playing 2 copies of the super rare Monkey D. Luffy at 2 cost, 3,000 power. He has an effective, if there's 2 down under him, he can't be KO'd by a strike character. It's kind of memey, because he's made of rubber, you can't bash him in the face. But I mean, his other effect that just says give 2 Rested Dawn to him makes him a 5k attacker, so he's always attacking, and he only costs 2, is not terrible. I think it's a good card. Gordon lets you filter a bit, on play, place a card from your hand on the bottom of the deck and draw a card. He has 2k guard. Maybe you're looking for some combo pieces. I think it's solid in a deck like this where you want to see specific cards. For Zoro, Zoro is amazing. Zoro's 3 costs, 5k, has Rush. You can do some very nice combos in this deck where you can play him for 3 swing. Then you can bounce him to your hand to play the 5-drop Law that then swaps another card, say with the same Zoro, because it's back in your hand. You can swing with it. There's a lot of potential with this card because it can swing and then you can bounce it and play it. Very nice. And it's low costed, so you can actually do those types of combos when you have a good amount of Dawn. The big Luffy, 5-drop 6k, has Rush. Where there's 2 Dawn under him, your opponent can't block. And when you're playing the 1-drop Nami, you can actually get this effect on very easily. You can even just hard cast him with 5, put 2 under him with the Nami and swing. But you can even play him for 2 because of the Law. You just bounce one of your little green drops. I think it's very good. That's one of your big hitters. 2 copies of the starter deck Law that on play you get to restand a Supernova or a Heart Pirates. I think 2 is the correct number for this. I wouldn't play more than 2 of this because you'd rather play this Law, which is the blocker that has the on-play return a character and then play a 3 or less. This is the one I would more likely want to see in my hand because it has more combo potential. And he's a fantastic blocker at 6k. He also works well with the starter deck Killer Trigger that they're not playing, which is a little weird to me. I would definitely play, not a full set, but maybe at least 2, because you can, play him, swap him, play him again. He can out, decent little guys that have already attacked. Like this Zoro, for instance. After this attack, it's sitting there and rested. He can just pop that for free. Playing 2 copies of Yamato. Yamato is not a card, in my experience, that I would just throw into a deck. I would play a deck revolving around Yamato to make sure that he could swing in to get that effect off. With double attack, does 2 damage and banish those 2 damage to a straight to drop. It's a very powerful effect, but only when you can get in the damage. So if they have blockers, this Yamato's not going anywhere. They're just going to block him. I am working on a Yamato build, so I will definitely explain more about what Yamato can do later on in another deck profile. 2 copies of You Can Be My Samurai. Now this card, I think, has potential in this deck, because for one, you get to draw 2 cards. It says rest 2 characters, draw 2 cards. And when you first read this card, you're like, why would I want to do that? But in this deck, specifically, you can use your rested guys. So you play this for 1, rest 2 guys, draw 2. You use Law, you pay 2, you bounce one of the rested guys to play a guy. And then if you're doing the full combo with like the blocker Law, then you can bounce the other rested guy. But at least you're getting 1 rested guy out. And then you're plussing. I think this is one of the few decks that I would actually maybe consider playing this card in. And I do want to test it. I haven't tested Law enough to see, you know, my particular ratios of what I want to do in the deck. But I think that card has potential. Gum Gum Red Hawk is the 2 cost plus 4k for red. And then you can KO any 4,000 or power or less. Solid, you know. It's this versus Punk Gibson, because you don't really want to play both. That's a lot of non-investment that you have to leave up. It's kind of up to preference on that. 2 copies of Gum Gum Jet Pistol. It's a solid card. I definitely wouldn't play any less than 2 in probably any red deck. It's possibly even like a 3 of. 4 is probably clogging, especially because he's playing 2 copies of Round Table, which is a card I really like. It lets you nag any character on the board by 10k, so you can just swing over it with even your little 1-drops. So, you know, the big Kaidos, even like if they have a big blocker, you can go, and then they can't really block with it. That's a little niche, but it's really used for big boss monsters, especially the big kid. This card like destroys that card. But yeah, there's definitely combo potential in this list. I think it's pretty solid. There's definitely changes I would make personally. I need to test with the Law some more, but good. Moving on to the Zoro boy. Zoro is our red leader from the base set. Dawn under him and all your guys gain 1,000. Very simple effect, but very useful. You know, it just lets you swing wide. Starting off with 4 copies of the 1-drop Chopper blocker. Good, easy blocker to play. Red needs those because they don't actually have a lot of good blockers. Playing the 1-drop Nami that lets you reuse your used Dawn, which is good. Playing 3 copies of that. 4 copies of Otama. Good card, solid. 4 copies of the Check 5 Nami. It's a fantastic card. I think you should just always play 5 of this. It was very weird to me that the other list wasn't. Now this is the new Usopp we haven't seen yet in this video. So this is the Dawn under him during your turn. Once per turn, when your opponent activates a event, you get to draw a card. So if your opponent has some Dawn up and you think they're going to use an event to block you, you know, set up this Usopp and you get a plus when they defend. Nothing wrong with that. Plus he has 2k guard. So I think this is a solid 2 of definitely. Playing 4 copies of this Gordon that lets you filter your hand a bit. Filter's good. I mean, nothing wrong with that. Unless you really liked him. Played full playset. Playing the Sanji that lets you take a life to your hand to give him 2k, and then he can put 2 Dawn under him. So it makes him a 7k. Zori's an 8k. He's a solid attacker. He has 2k guard. I'm not super big fan of like killing myself, but it could come up. I mean, I don't know. This Robin's really good. I definitely play 4 of this and not 3. They're playing 3. She has a Dawn under her when attacking KO any of your opponent's characters with 3,000 or less power. She terrorizes the little blockers. Like, she just destroys them because before they can block, she can pop. So you just swing, you declare your target, and then you pop the blocker before it can block you. Fantastic card. 4, another list with 4 of the Rush Zoro. Very good card. Doesn't have the same combo potential in this deck, obviously, but I mean, it's just a basic attacker and he's 6k with the Zoro, so why not? Playing the Recycle Uta. So Uta on play gets to return a red character other than Uta with a cost 3 or less from your trash to your hand. It's not bad. You can get your Zoros back, you can get a Chopper back, but she does cost 4 and she only has 4k. The stat line's a bit to me, but I could see, you know, a salvage effect like that being useful. Playing 1 copy of the Brook. This Brook with a Dawn under when attacking gives 2 of the opponent's characters minus 2,000. So he combos with the Robin and he combos with the Jet Pistol. Not bad. 5k attacker, 6 with the Dawn under him, 7 with the Zoro skill active, has guard. I think it's solid. 3 copies of the Big Luffy, has rush, can make it so you can't block him. Solid card in red, definitely. Playing 1 clutch copy of the Daddy Shanksy boy. 9-drop, 10k, has rush. Your opponent can't block with McNuggets, which are 2,000 power or less guys. So it's like the top end. He's 11k with the Zoro skill because you can use it. He doesn't tap you out, but you're also playing the Nami, so you could use it anyway. It's just nice. I think it's kind of like a 2 of though when you're playing a top end card like that because you want to see him, I guess. Playing one copy of the Diablo Jumble. I don't like the card per se, personally. I think it's dead 99% of the entire game, and then that 1% at the end of the game you can like maybe sack somebody with it. Because it says, for 1, choose a leader or one of your characters with a Straw Hat Crew trait during this turn that can't be blocked. You know, you could catch someone with their pants down, I guess, but I'm not a super big fan of the card. 2 copies of 2 Years to Subodhi lets you check top 5 for any Straw Hat character, add it to your hand, and then put the rest on the bottom. Very good for getting pieces that you're looking for. 2 copies of Radical Beam. Radical Beam's good. It's a 1 cost that gives you 2k, but if you're 2 or less life, it gives you 4k. This is a kind of card I would definitely play to test, at least in the Law deck, because you get to 2 a lot faster, so it's a lot of value for 1 to go up to 4k. Gum Gum Red Hawk, talked about this already. It's the 2-drop plus 4k for red, get to pop a 4 or less. Playing a full set of Jet Pistol in this deck seems a little excessive, because you don't want to clog on them, obviously. It's a good card, but you don't want to clog, because you can't play it, it doesn't attack. So I think 4 might be a bit much, but I mean, solid is solid. And then 1 copy of the Round Table. And that wraps up the Zoro deck list. So that's all 4 of our deck lists for today that I wanted to go over from this tournament. If you like this type of content, go ahead and leave a like, and maybe I can do some more of these little meta breakdowns of these tournament decks. You know, go through them, have my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.